Isaac, the Smile of God, Part 3. The blessings of Twilight Rehoboth had become more than a camp. It was a sanctuary. Isaac's tent spread like roots around the well of spaciousness, and around the stone altar where the scent of worship and gratitude still seemed to hang in the air. The blessing blossomed visibly. The flocks multiplied until the valleys were painted white and brown. The grain barns defied the memory of famine, and Isaac's reputation as a man blessed by his God and peaceful in his strength spread throughout Canaan. At the center of this abundance, in the innermost heart of Isaac's tent, there was a void. A silence that neither the servants' laughter, nor the bleating of lambs, nor even Rebekah's deep and tranquil love could fill. The promise of an offspring numerous as the stars echoed in his ears like an unfinished melody. 20 years had passed since his marriage. 20 years of monthly waits, of hopes that rose and fell with the moon. 20 years of Rebekah hiding pain behind a smile, and of Isaac seeking solace on the horizon, where the sky met the earth. The laughter in his name now felt like a burden. How to be laughter when the sweetest sound, the cry of a baby in his own tent, refused to come? The promise was too big, too grand, and its fulfillment seemed to rest on the fragile shoulders of a sterile womb. Isaac's faith, forged in drought and strife, now faced its most intimate and silent test, the barrenness of time. One night, Rebekah could no longer contain the pain. The tears she swallowed during the day erupted in muffled sobs against her pillow. Isaac, lying beside her, felt every tremor like a blow to his own spirit. He wrapped her in his arms, but words of comfort died on his lips. What words could cover such an abyss? It was then that he got up. Silently, he put on his robe and left the tent. The camp slept under a blanket of cold stars. He passed the altar, passed the well of Rehoboth, and began to walk. There was no destination in his mind, only a visceral need to move, to carry his agonizing pain away from Rebekah's sleep. His feet, however, knew the way. They led him back to the hill. It's the same hill where his father had consecrated him, where he had first felt the unmistakable touch of the presence. The stones of the old altar were still there, blackened by time and by a fire long extinguished. Isaac fell to his knees. Not with the contained reverence of that night with Abraham, but with the raw desperation of a man at the end of his own strength. His hands gripped the loose earth, and a groan, deep and guttural, tore through the night's quiet. Yahweh. The name escaped like a hoarse sigh, laden with decades of waiting. God of Abraham, my God. I struggled to form words. His prayers had always been silent, internal. Now, the pain demanded a voice, the promise. You made the promise. To my parents, to me. Stars, sand of the sea. I see the stars, Yahweh. Every night, they blink at me, reminding me of what I don't have. Reminding me of what you said it would be. His tears wet the dry earth at the foot of the altar. Rebekah, she is strong, stronger than I am. But her strength is running out. My love for her is a garden without fruit, spring in dry ground. I don't ask for riches. I don't ask for lands. I already have more than I deserve by your grace, I ask. For her smile, for the sound of a life that will carry forward your name, your promise. Isaac bowed his head, his forehead touching the cold stone of the altar. Anguish consumed him, but at the center of that whirlwind, a stubborn thread of faith still held. The faith he had learned at the well of contention. Blessing comes after perseverance, provision after the cry. I don't understand your timing, I don't understand your silence, but I cling to you. As Jacob would cling to the angel, I cling. Bless me, give me a son, for love of Rebekah, for faithfulness to your word, because if you don't, the promise dies with me. And the laughter my name carries will become the bitter laughter of the world. He stayed there, motionless, emptied. The prayer had not been elegant, it had been ugly, full of pain and doubt, but it was real. It was the cry of a heart that, despite everything, still turned to the only source it knew. And then, in the exhaustion that followed the cry, came the response. It was not an audible voice. It was a wave of peace so deep, so overwhelming, that it seemed to envelop the entire hill, calm that was not the absence of pain, but the certainty of a presence within the pain. The air seemed to grow heavier, more sacred. The stars above shone with a sudden intensity, as if the curtain between heaven and earth had grown thin as a veil. In the sanctuary of his spirit, Isaac knew. Words formed not in his ears, but in the center of his being, clear as spring water. Your cry has been heard, Isaac. Rebekah, your wife, will conceive. It was a simple statement. Absolute. There was no perhaps, no condition. It was a decree from the throne itself. But the divine communication did not stop there. Along with the promise of a son came a flash, an inner vision that made Isaac hold his breath. He saw two peoples, two nations struggling within a womb. A struggle that began before the first breath, and a disturbing truth: the older will serve the younger. And then the presence added, with a tone that was both comfort and commission. Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. The struggle you see is the struggle of the destinies I myself have traced. Trust in me, Isaac. Even when the path seems contrary, your prayer was not only heard, it was the catalyst for my purpose. The vision faded. The sensation of peace remained, but now mixed with a tremor of awe. A son, in truth, sons, complex lineage, a future entwined with conflict and divine election. Isaac's prayer for a simple heir had been answered with the prophecy of entire nations. He stood up, his knees trembling. The weight of anguish was gone, replaced by a different weight, the solemn weight of prophecy received. He descended the hill in the light of dawn, a man transformed. There was no euphoria on his face, but a deep serenity etched with the furrows of the night of struggle. When he entered the tent, Rebekah was awake, her eyes red and questioning. He didn't need to say anything, simply took her in his arms, and something in his embrace, a solidity, a transmitted peace, made her look at him. He heard Isaac whispered, his voice hoarse from the night of prayer, but firm. Yahweh heard, "You will conceive." The hope that shone in Rebekah's eyes was so fragile and intense that it nearly broke Isaac's heart again. In the months that followed, the prophecy was fulfilled. The pregnancy was confirmed, but it came with terrible agony. The baby struggled inside her with a violence that left her pale and frightened. In her desperation, she also sought the Lord. "Why is this happening to me?" she cried out in her heart, and the answer came to her, independently, echoing what had been told to Isaac. "Two nations are in your womb. The older will serve the younger." Rebekah kept these words in her heart, a painful and sacred mystery. When the twins were born, the first, red and hairy, came out gripping the second one's heel, as if trying to pull him back. Isaac, upon seeing Esau, felt a wave of primal, powerful paternal love. Upon seeing Jacob, smaller, smoother, he remembered the vision and God's strange design. The laughter that filled the tent that day was mixed with tears and reverent awe. The years passed. Boys grew up, different as day and night. Esau, the hunter, the man of the field. Isaac's favorite. Jacob, the quiet one, who preferred the tents. Rebekah's favorite. And Isaac watched the prophecy of struggle hovering over his family like a shadow. He loved them both with a fierceness that hurt, but the patriarchal blessing, the vehicle of the promise, weighed on his conscience. To whom should he give it? Old age came to Isaac, not with Abraham's waning vitality, but with a physical darkness. Cataracts covered his eyes, not only of light, but of the complexities around him. He saw Esau in his primitive strength, smelled his scent of field and blood, and in his darkness, associated him with the very blessing of the land, with the promise of abundance. His human, partial heart leaned toward the older son. But God, the God of the hill and the well, the God who hears the cry, had not yet finished his work in Isaac. The patriarchal blessing was not a human will to be given by preference. It was a divine instrument to be delivered according to the divine purpose. When the deception happened, when Jacob, guided by Rebekah and his own yearning for election, dressed in goatskins and stole the blessing intended for Esau, the cry of anguish that tore through the air from Esau was a physical blow to Isaac's blind heart. He trembled violently, an agitation that went far beyond anger at having been deceived. It was the tremor of a man feeling the threads of divine destiny moving through his human hands, regardless of his plans. The moment Esau went out swearing vengeance and Jacob fled north, Isaac was left alone in the darkness of his tent. The house he had built was shattered. The peace he valued, destroyed. And then, in the silence of the wreckage, he sought the only presence that remained, Yahweh Yireh. he murmured into the darkness. "My God, what have I done? What have you done?" And in that place of apparent total ruin came the sweetest and most surprising communion of his life. There was no reprimand for his partiality, no complicated explanation. There was only a certainty, smooth as oil, flowing into his broken spirit. The purpose remains, Isaac. The promise follows its course. Your mistake did not annul it. My chosen one was not diverted. The blessing you pronounced, even in the deception, was my blessing to be given. Now, trust. Until the end. And Isaac, the man of laughter, the heir to the promise, the digger of wells, the father of a troubled legacy, trusted. When Esau, in his pain, married women outside the covenant, Isaac called him, and with a clarity that came from acceptance, gave him an earthly blessing, but one separate from the line of the promise. He blessed Jacob again, deliberately now, sending him to seek a wife from the house of Bethuel, confirming him as the covenant bearer. His final years were lived in shadow, but not in darkness. He lived near the well of the oath Beersheba, where the covenant with Abimelech had been made. His physical strength was little, but his spiritual vision had never been clearer. He no longer needed physical altars or dramatic visions. The presence dwelt with him. It was the breath in his lungs, the peace in his old bones. When the day came for his eyes to close for the last time, both his sons were with him. Esau and Jacob, reconciled by time and grace, each in his place in God's greater plan. Isaac gathered them both with his trembling hands. His face, wrinkled like an old nut, was serene. He didn't say much, just whispered their names, a final and simple blessing over each. And then, with a last sigh that sounded like relief and arrival, Isaac was gathered to his people. He was buried by Esau and Jacob together in the cave of Machpelah, alongside Abraham and Sarah and Rebekah, his beloved. The earth received his body, but his legacy, the legacy of laughter born of faith, of provision springing from obedience, of blessing that flows even through human era, continued to run like an underground river through history. Because Isaac had learned, and in his life had demonstrated, the deepest truth: contact with God is not reserved for moments of glory on the mountaintops. It is forged in the valleys of drought, dug in the wells of strife, cried out in the dark nights of barrenness, and found, most sweetly of all, in the quiet surrender of twilight, when a man finally stops trying to steer the promise and simply rests in the arms of the one who made it. And so, the smile of God, which gave origin to his name, rested upon Isaac for all eternity. Not the laughter of a joke, but the smile of a father, satisfied with his son. Yes. The end. May God bless you and keep you. Subscribe to the channel and receive more videos like this. Thank you for watching.